Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Santa Barbara Airport Commission meeting. And I was still waiting for at least one more commissioner before I started, but we do have a quorum, so I think we'll go ahead. For the public that's here, I'm delighted to see the turnout. Please, if you wish to speak, fill out a speaker's card and give it to Ms. Graham over here. And with that item, I would like to call the meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. And like to call on Mo to conduct a roll call.
Good evening, commissioners. Okay, Commissioner Miller. Here. Commissioner Reed. Commissioner R. Curry is also not here. Commissioner Maya is excused. Commissioner Grabman.
Here.
Vice Chair Glazier.
Here.
Chair Houghton.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. My first question is to our airport director, Mr. Hastert. Are there any changes to the agenda?
We have no changes to the agenda.
Thank you very much. Under those circumstances, notices that on Friday, April 14th, 2023 at 5 p.m., the Airport Commission Secretary, Ms. Mo Graham, duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at the Airport Commission. It's that time, number 3, for public comment. I only have 3 speakers lists, and I'm surprised considering the number of guests here tonight. If you have a non-agenda topic, you should fill out one of these forms to speak now. Okay, and I see one form here for the master plan. We'll hold off on that one till we get to the master plan, since that is an agenda topic. Mo, is there any additional speaker forms?
I don't have any.
Okay, so when we ask individuals to come up and speak, you're allowed 3 minutes, and then we keep moving on from there. And Mo will run a timer for each speaker, and I will do the same. So I'd like to start with Mr. Gordon Feingold, please. Oh, it is a master plan. You're right. A revised plan. Yes, I will hold off on that. Thank you. Mr. Andy Gottlieb. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Andy Gottlieb. I live in Santa Barbara. I've lived here for 25 years. We live in an area not far from Campanile Hill to the west, a little area called Yankee Farm. We've experienced the airplane activity from way pre-pandemic to way post-pandemic. And pre-pandemic, there was never an issue. It was all the planes were flying out over the ocean in that little area that's kind of a noise abatement zone I've seen on your maps. Probably not the right term. Once the pandemic was over, all of a sudden, everybody and their brother was flying over our house or our neighbor's house. And you probably see my name on the noise hotline more often than not. It's gotten a lot better. The commercial pilots, the airlines are mostly flying where they're supposed to be flying. The private jets, not so much. They don't seem to pay attention. My point of my conversation here, is there anything that can be done to encourage them to do so? I don't know, when they ask for landing permission, is there anything that can be said? I know the FAA is very much involved in this. I know you can't tell pilots where to go. Specifically, they're in charge of their own safety, but I just appreciate it if there was some way that they could be notified either when they make plans to come here or when they check in for pre-landing, if there's anything that can be done about that. And by the way, I'm very much in favor of an airport in our town. I'm pro-airport.
Thank you, Mr. Gottlieb. Sure. I share your concerns. I think we probably both saw that G650 at 9:30 this morning go right over our homes.
Yep.
And normally they're offshore. Friends, oh, that's master plan. I think everything, let's take a look here. Master plan. Oh my gosh, Dr. Vivek Adarsh. It's a pleasure seeing you here this evening. Please.
Hi, good evening. I'm Dr. Vivek Adarsh. I'm the founder and CEO of AVI. We're a local startup that develops artificial intelligence software for the aviation industry, particularly to reduce baggage mishandling. I'm sure you guys are aware of it. It's an honor to stand here and speak in front of you about a matter that's of great importance to not only us, but many businesses in the local community. As you may be aware of, businesses in the community require frequent business travel to Silicon Valley. And we have found ourselves facing a significant challenge when it comes to air travel options. Why is that? Well, because currently, SFO and Oakland are our primary airports to the valley, right? However, traveling from either SFO or Oakland to the valley can take hours in traffic, making it less than an ideal option for business travel. In addition, and I'm sure everybody knows this, United flights to SFO are pretty expensive, which puts an undue financial burden on our businesses. That's why we're here today to ask for your support in introducing a new Southwest flight from Santa Barbara to San Jose, SJC. This new route would provide a much needed solution to the transportation challenges that we and many other businesses in the area face. Our employees are all located in the valley, which is why we require frequent business visits, almost as much as 6 to 8 times a month. And the lack of convenient air travel directly in the area into the valley has been a significant obstacle. And I truly believe that this new route could provide the solution we need. Furthermore, we truly believe that this route would also benefit the local economy because it would provide convenient options, and we could help attract more businesses and startups to the area. And this in turn would create new job opportunities and stimulate economic growth. So in conclusion, I would definitely believe that a new route, a Southwest route to San Jose, would be a win-win situation for businesses and local community alike. And would greatly appreciate your support in making this route a reality. And we definitely look forward to working with you to improve air travel options in the area. So thank you for your attention and consideration.
Thank you, Dr. Darsh. Okay, we do not have any more speaker forms for the non-agenda topics, so we're going to move forward to liaison reports. We're fortunate we have both of our city council members here, Council Member Eric Friedman and from Santa Barbara, and Council Member James Caraco from Goleta. I'd like to call Council Member Eric Friedman up first, please.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to have a mic over here now. So appreciate that. That's my update today. No, so just real brief, because it's actually the big agenda item tonight is last night at council we did hear the airport master plan. So that was a good discussion, and looking forward to hearing even more comments tonight and become more familiar with it. So I'll save my questions, comments for the actual item.
And in the spirit of regional cooperation, we're sharing a mic. So James Cariaco, City of Goleta, just a few quick things. One is the City of Goleta is continuing its economic development strategic plan. I want to thank the airport staff and Chris Hastert in particular for jumping into the fray and helping us with that and being a part of the advisory committee on our economic development strategic plan. We're actually rolling that out in a town hall right now at Goleta City Council chambers. So we're continuing to get some community input. That'll obviously impact the airport in a number of direct and indirect ways. So just wanted you to be aware of that. Also wanted to thank you for the continuing efforts to get your noise complaint data updated and more recent and more current data on the website. That's been appreciated and noted by the community members that I've talked to. Obviously, we have continue to have some challenges. I know our community is letting you know in different respects. So thank you for your continued patience and working on that on our behalf so that we can all get along. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, council members. Okay, I'm going to call on Director Hastert to give the airport director report.
Thank you, Chair Houghton and commission members. I don't have much to report tonight. We've been busy getting ready for the roadshow with all of our master plan progress updates. Just a reminder, we are trying to schedule a special meeting for next week. And I apologize for having two meetings kind of back to back, but timing required that, and that is to go over the proposed budget for the airport. We were waiting for that budget item to go to council first, and timing with Jonathan to be able to be here to help explain that budget. So I hope all of you can attend, and even the ones that are missing. And then at that same meeting, we will also be going over the City of Goleta letter to finally provide that response back. Just a lot going on right now. I'd like to just give a special thank you to Craig with SB Aviators. We've been working together to try to promote general aviation here on the airport and looking for some future events and fun things. So he's been a pleasure to work with. You may have seen the article in Newshawk about the General Western Aero hangars. And I just wanted to just provide a brief comment on that. We do have some old facilities here on the airport that have generated a lot of interest from the community in potentially protecting them or restoring them. Airport staff is not pushing any specific direction with those hangars at this time, but we do have a report that is due very soon with information on the constraints that we have around those facilities and what can happen with them, including potential costs. And as soon as we have that, we'll be happy to share that and make a recommendation, and ultimately the council and commission will hear much more about that. And I was going to do a brief introduction, but I don't think she's here, so I will just leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Director Hastert. Commissioners, any questions of our director on his report? Comments? Okay. I'd like to ask if there are any additional speaker forms on Director Hastert's report from the public. Okay. Moving to number 6, the consent calendar. This is a very light consent calendar. We only have the subject of the minutes from our commission meeting on Wednesday, March 15th. I'm asking the commissioners if they have any questions regarding the minutes, and if so, please speak. Okay. Are there any comments from the public on the consent calendar, which includes only the minutes from last month? Okay. I would like to ask a motion of the commission for approval of the consent calendar.
So moved.
Thank you. That's Vice Chair Glazier and Topaz Grabman. And vote for the whole group. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. All right. I'd like to call Director Hastert again to introduce our item number 7, administrative reports, the subject Santa Barbara Airport Master Plan update.
Thank you again, Chair Houghton and commission members. I'm happy to be here tonight to present an update on the progress with our master plan update. And this is our second presentation. We did the city council meeting yesterday, and you actually have the benefit of a slightly revised presentation based on the flow of that meeting. So he's over there talking, but Councilmember Friedman will actually appreciate maybe a couple of extra slides that we put in here. So with that, I'd just like to quickly introduce our team that is working on the master plan. So obviously myself, Sarah Iza, our airport development manager, Jessica Metzger, our project planner, just behind you over here. Is Brad here tonight? And Brad Klinzing, our supervising engineer, who is not here with us tonight. And then we have an excellent team with some expert aviation consultants that are helping us out with this, primarily with Mead and Hunt leading the effort and some of their sub-consultants. So we have Corbett Smith, who is not able to join us here tonight, who is the project manager. We have Hardy Bullock down here in the back, who will be doing a brief part of this presentation, who is the deputy project manager, and Brian Moore, who is going to be talking a little bit about the forecasting, and he's their national planning practice lead. So just a quick summary of what we're going to cover tonight. It's going to be the background of the master plan, technical progress that we have made to date, stakeholder engagement, and what our next steps are going to be. And if I might just kick it off, because I think there was a little bit of confusion with one of the comments from the public yesterday, we are not presenting a master plan to you tonight. We are giving you an update on the process. So we don't actually have alternatives and projects that we're proposing that you review tonight. That will be further steps coming on, but this is just an update on where we are in the process and looking to get some more feedback as we move forward. So the project background, we have a 2017 master plan that several of you probably on this commission were involved in. And a master plan generally is conducted, an update of the master plan is conducted about every 5 to 10 years. As you can see, we're roughly 6 years outside of that, 5 to 6 years. And the reason why we are moving forward at the quicker pace is the demand on the airport has reached the levels much quicker than anticipated with the addition of Southwest and the activity post-COVID with the comeback that we've had. So it really had the necessity to bring forward another update. And so the planning horizon for master plan is about 20 years. The updated master plan will be based on figures and information from 2011 up until 2022. And will address changing conditions to the region and to the industry. One of the questions that's been asked of me a lot is how much of the 2017 master plan alternatives will be brought forward? And the answer to that is we don't know yet, but we will definitely consider everything that was in the 2017 master plan to not recreate things that we don't have to. But things in the industry and things in the regions could have changed enough that we don't have to stick with what was in the 2017 plan. And it does provide us with a clear path forward as we see the growing demand at the airport, and we can plan for that accordingly and not just have all of these capital projects hit us all at one time. So what a master plan is, it's a 20-year plan completed about every 10 years, updated about every 10 years. It's a document that looks at the capital projects and the land use compatibility with a focus on what the demands are of the airport and how we're able to meet or not meet those needs. It's sponsored by the FAA. We did receive a grant for this project, and in doing so, we actually have to meet their standards to justify that funding and go through the process in accordance with the manner that they have set out for master planning. And it's focused for the long-term development potential of the airport. What the master plan is not, it is not a business plan or a marketing plan. So this isn't a document that we're putting together to try to attract more air service or bring more projects forward that we think would just be interesting projects to have. It's not a wish list or a funding guarantee. It's not a binding document. So this is a plan that we bring forward with information based on the demand, and as the airport continues to grow, this is a document that we go to seek that guidance on what we should be looking at. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to move forward with those projects. It's a document that does not set policy or rates for the airport, and it is not an engineering level document. So you won't get the specifics of one example is FBO area on the airport. We're not going to show you specifically where the hangars will be and where the ramp will be. It's more of a design criteria for the areas that things will be in overall for the airport. And it's not a rigid blueprint for the future development of the airport. So the master plan goals are to prepare, promote, address, and involve. So we want to prepare the airport for the coming trends in aviation and identify a 20-year forecast for that aviation activity. And in doing so, then we can plan for that future. We want to promote the airport financial resiliency. We want to address the balance of airport facility needs with continuing protection for the Goleta Sluice. So I know there's been a lot of questions about, does the airport plan to just continue to expand into all of the areas? We understand the sensitive areas that we have around the airport. We respect them, and we definitely want to continue to preserve those areas. And we want to involve all of the on and off airport stakeholders in the process. So this is not a master plan where airport staff gets together with a consultant and dictates, here's the projects that we want to see for the airport based on our, opinions of the airport. This is where we gather all of the different groups together, on airport businesses, the community members, the public for public meetings, which we will talk about future meetings coming up where we accept that input, and then put all of that together into a plan. So our guiding principles, and these are also listed on our webpage for the master plan update, are safety and security as the top principle, and you will see as part of our presentation. This is not just about the current facilities and the demand that they meet. It's also about the changing dynamics of the regulations and standards. As they change, we need to adapt to those new FAA standards. Economic vitality, transportation diversity. How are people getting to the airport? How is our parking meeting our requirements here at the airport? The community, and I mentioned the community is more than just our outside community of Goleta and Santa Barbara and the unincorporated area. It's also on-airport stakeholders and everybody involved with the airport. Environmental preservation, as I mentioned, we have some really sensitive areas around us here at the airport with the Goleta Slough, and we definitely look to continue to protect those. And cultural resources, both with Chumash and also things like the General Western Aero hangars that I spoke about earlier. So a recap of what the deliverables are of a master plan. So we did a project kickoff already with the Airport Commission, and public outreach and engagement has already begun. So just today we had 2 more committee meetings specific to community input as well as technical input. And we will continue to have more of those meetings in the future as well as public meetings that are open for everybody. Conceptual designs will be coming. As I mentioned, we don't have that for you tonight, but your input and the input of the public and all of our stakeholders is what will be guiding those conceptual designs. An implementation plan, which also looks at the finances of the airport and how we can move forward and make sure that we can fund all of those projects. There will be a noise analysis, and I want to just set the expectations. That noise analysis is really based on the difference in noise contours between our existing operations and the alternatives that are selected as the preferred alternatives. So you will see maps on a page that show noise contours with decibel levels. The FAA has a 65 decibel level for CNEL that kind of is a standard for where different impacts lie and what funding and things are available. I will just want to make a note. I think there was a little bit of confusion in my comments yesterday at the City Council meeting that just because there's the 65 decibel contour and that might be on airport, it doesn't mean that there aren't noise annoyances beyond that 65 decibel noise contour. It just means that we're limited by the FAA in being able to fund noise abatement projects and things like that. And then also all of the projects that will come forward as a part of this master plan, and we'll be talking about those in the future and some of the other studies we're doing, those will be coming back for hearings with the decision makers, probably both to the commission and to the council, but planning commission and a lot of other groups as well as the public. So we don't have any, like I said, no specific projects tonight. This is to guide us in bringing back those alternatives to you in the future. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Hardy with Mead and Hunt to go over some of the technical details.
Oh, thank you. Let's see. Right arrow, I'm assuming. Hi, everybody. My name's Hardy Bullock. I'm a consultant with Mead and Hunt, and I'm part of the planning team. I'm a planner with my colleague Brian Moore, our national practice leader. And I'd just like to say, first off, thanks for giving us the time to present some of the information. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the timing, a little bit about the scope, and then Brian's going to talk about the forecast. It's been a pleasure working with staff, and they've supported us in this process, so I just want to make note of that. It's been great to work with you and the other staff members here. The master plan, obviously, as you can see here, is about an 18-month process. It started in the summer of 2022 with an inventory, essentially looking at all the different characteristics of the airport, as-built environment, plans, and things like that. And it moved on to the environmental overview. What are the environmental features? And I'll show you the boundaries of that type of survey here in a minute. And then in the fall and the winter of 2022, we worked on the aviation forecast. So you're going to see the draft forecast here. We will make mention that the forecast was circulated for public comment, and the airport did not receive any public comments on the draft forecast. There's two elements that are approved by the FAA. The forecast is one of them, and then the last deliverable, which is the airport layout plan, the plan set, is also approved by the FAA. So we find ourselves here at the facility requirements chapter. This is, can we meet the expected demand outlined in the forecast? There's 4 input committee meetings happening. Those are indicated by the brown circles, and then 3 public meetings. And those are going to obviously handle the facility requirements, then on to the alternative section, and then we jump into land use planning, financial feasibility, ultimately conclude with the airport layout plan. The master plan central questions that we were going to ask ourselves, essentially, how busy will the airport be in 20 years? And Brian's going to give us an overview of the forecast. He's going to answer some of these questions for us. What are the future trends and challenges in aviation? We see a reduction of changes in fleet mix, reduction of the regional jets, wider use of narrow-body aircraft, more emphasis on passenger experience. These are all things that future trends and challenges in aviation that we want to ask ourselves and look at. What are the terminal facility needs? There's a terminal plan underway. We'll thread all of that information into the master planning process. Are the existing facilities sufficient? What are the vehicle access and parking needs, landside circulation needs? What are the highest and best uses for the airport property? And that includes aeronautical and non-aeronautical properties. What opportunities are there for revenue generation? Obviously, the FAA and the community want a self-sustaining airport, and that's a big component of a master plan process. And what are the economic development and land use opportunities in front of us? So the study area, you can see outline the airport property here. You can see the non-aeronautical aviation, the non-aero portions on the north are outlined in blue. And then you see the airfield and airspace, aircraft movement and non-movement areas kind of in that peach X colored in the center. The environmental inventory areas are outlined in green. And then you can see the terminal area in yellow, general aviation in purple, and non-aeronautical in blue, air cargo in purple. Sorry about that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Brian. He can talk to us a little bit about the forecast.
Thank you, Hardy. It's good to be with you this evening. So the forecast is a foundational element of any master plan, and it looks out 20 years. I'd like to start with the answer here. So on this slide, what we see on the far left is the airport envisions passenger traffic growing from calendar year 2022, saw 1.2 million total passengers use the airport, growing to approximately 1.8 million total annual passengers in about 20 years' time. To accommodate all of those passengers, we estimate that there will be more landings and takeoffs by the commercial airlines at Santa Barbara, growing from approximately 10,000 annual landings and takeoffs to about 18,000 in the horizon year of the forecast. The reason those two grow at different rates is because the airlines like to serve new passenger demand with larger airplanes, and you see that happening here in Santa Barbara, and you see it happening across the nation. I want to jump to the lower right corner of the slide here. The critical aircraft is a FAA definition that is a master plan requirement that basically looks at all of the airplanes that use the airport on a routine basis and regular basis. Their definition is an airplane type that sees operations of 500 per year. If an airplane uses an airport 500 times a year, it becomes it can be the critical aircraft. So in this case, the most demanding airplane that uses the airport more than 500 times a year is the 737-800, which is a narrow-body airplane. So think single-aisle airplane with about 2 or 3 seats on either side of the aisle, depending on the configuration. If you've flown Southwest Airlines, this is the only airplane that Southwest flies. They fly several variants of the 737. This particular version is the 737-800. The critical aircraft's very important for the airfield safety and compliance with regulations. It governs all sorts of FAA standards on the airfield. In particular, for example, when we think about the separation distance between a runway centerline and a taxiway centerline, that's governed by FAA and whatever the critical aircraft might be. In addition, the pavement strength that informs pavement design is also governed by the critical aircraft. Turning our attention to the upper right corner, another element of the activity that we forecast is based aircraft. So those are the airplanes that call Santa Barbara Airport home. There are approximately 140 aircraft based on the airport today. We expect that to grow to approximately 185. We use that projection to plan for new hangars, new apron on the airfield to accommodate those that would like to have airplanes on the airport. This is a graph of the enplaned passenger forecast. Enplaned passengers are passengers that pay to fly on an airplane, and these are the boarding passengers, so people leaving the airport as opposed to arriving to the airport. So this is 1/2 of all the passengers that see the airport. On the graph shown, on the far left, we have the year 2011, so we have historical data from 2011 to 2021. And on the right, we have two versions of the forecast. One is the forecast that was developed by the consulting team in consultation with the airport staff, shown in the dashed line. In the yellow/orange line, that is the forecast for the airport that the FAA has prepared. They prepare their forecast throughout the year, and they publish it. They published the most recent version in February of 2023. So they're doing this work in 2022 to represent 2022. I point that out because, as you can see on the graph, the airport, like all airports in the country, experienced a dramatic decline in activity in the year 2020. You see the previous peak for passenger enplanements was in 2019 at approximately 500,000 annual enplanements. You see the drop to about 300,000 in 2020, as we talked about. That actually, the spike in the forecast from 2021 to 2022 is actually an actual result. It's a realized result. And so, again, the airport accommodated 1.2 million annual passengers, or half of that, 600,000 in 2022. So the airport has seen more than 100% recovery from the pandemic. Not all airports have. Some are still hovering around 70 to 80% of their previous peak. Going forward, we expect that the airport will experience more normal organic growth, slower growth, and that's why you see the flattening of that curve going forward. Overall, the compound annual growth rate for the forecast period from 2021 looking out to 2041 is about 4.8%. This is a tabular summary of most of the forecast elements. You see in the first row of this table is enplanements. You can see that the actual number is reported for 2022, as I've mentioned, and the growth rate in the top. The second category of activity that's shown here in the table is aircraft operations, again, landings and takeoffs, for all of the different segments of the market, starting at the top with air carrier and air taxi activity. That's activity with passengers or air cargo. Down in the second half of the operations, you see all of the general aviation forecasts that we have developed. I'll just point out that the last part of the table is the based aircraft forecast. Again, we expect the airport to see about 44 new airplanes basing at the field over the next 20 years. And if you look at the various categories, you can see how we expect those different categories to grow, with the most growth being in the jet category on the field. These trends that are shown in this forecast for Santa Barbara are relatively consistent with nationwide trends, although your growth rates are healthier than most. This is a strong growing market where we see a lot of upside in the next 20 years. Is there any questions before I turn it back to Hardy to talk about more interesting topics related to the master plan? Okay, thank you.
If I may, how do you distinguish between air carrier and air taxi? What is that distinction?
This is a good question. The question was, how do we distinguish between air carrier and air taxi? This is an FAA categorization that has to do with the size of the airplane first. So air carrier aircraft are those airplanes with 60 seats or more. Air taxi / commuter it should say air taxi / commuter. That's everything with less than 60 seats. That could be commercial activity by airlines flying, say, a regional jet. Those are the littler planes that you get on with 50 or so seats. It could also be if you charter a King Air with a local operator and fly on a small 6 to 8 to 10, 12-seat airplane. That would be an air taxi. If you've heard of NetJets, the private jet, and you buy a membership, that would be an example of an air taxi operation. Does that answer your question? Thanks for asking.
Good question. We're going to talk just a little bit about non-standard conditions on the airfield. Airports have long useful lifespans. Pavement have incredibly long useful lifespans if they're taken care of. It's not unusual for airports to have non-standard conditions. That would include the things we've outlined here. Basically, if you think about legal non-conforming in a building, the regulations that the FAA published for conditions of the airport were adequate during that time period. They periodically get updated. So part of our master plan initiatives is to go and inventory the airfield, understand where those deficiencies may lie, and then come up with a capital facility plan to correct those. So very typical for an airport. What you see some things, for example, connecting from a parallel taxiway straight through to the runway is non-conforming, so we want to change the perpendicular intersections. Want to make perpendicular intersections that are meeting at an angle of 90 degrees for visibility purposes. There's surface penetrations, setbacks that Brian was describing between the parallel runway and the two crosswind runways that need to be corrected. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So we just want to give you a little bit of an overview. The other piece in the far right hand under Papa and Golf are those two expanses of large open pavement. The FAA has a change in some of the way they feel about large expanses of pavement because people can taxi and become disoriented on where they are relative to the movement areas. So some of the things we're looking for in the master plan process. We just talked a little bit about the geometric improvements and modifications to meet those current standards. The crosswind runway consolidation was evaluated in the 2017 master plan. It will be evaluated again for justification or consolidation purposes, and I don't know, Chris, if you'd like to make additional comments on that concept.
Thank you, Hardy. So as you're aware, we have 3 runways here. The main runway 725 that the air carriers use. Then we have the 2 crosswind runways. Those runways have a certain amount of use, and based on the use, justifies whether the FAA will fund rehabilitation of those runways as needed and maintenance of those runways. So one of the items that was looked at in the 2017 master plan will be looked at in this one is if the FAA does not feel that there's justification to fund the maintenance of 3 runways, we may need to consolidate from those 2 crosswind runways down to 1. That will have a lot of implications for the tower, for the flight schools, things like that, so it's not something that we take lightly. But if the FAA isn't looking to fund that, it isn't necessarily something that the airport itself can fund for the renovation. So that's going to be a much larger discussion in the future.
Thanks, Chris. Other facilities identified for the siting and planning purposes that will get threaded into and brought into the master planning initiative is the replacement of the airport traffic control tower, hangars and based aircraft accommodation. Brian talked about changing the number of based aircraft, not itinerant, but based aircraft, and that does have an impact on the aircraft operations, both seasonally and annually. If aircraft can come here and drop passengers off and stay here, they avoid repositioning flights that can create additional impact. So there is some counterintuitive pieces to planning for accommodating aircraft and hangars and based aircraft. Terminal improvements we talked about, and that includes concessions, passenger experience, everything involved in the passenger terminal. And then landside access and parking and expansion of fuel facilities.
Spoil the season finale, but the air traffic control tower isn't that old.
Thank you. The control tower doesn't seem that old, at least not to me. I remember when there was one before that.
Good point. Chris, do you want to discuss that?
So I don't have all of the details on the new air traffic control tower, but you have to remember this is a 20-year planning document. So this isn't necessarily something we're proposing that the tower would be replaced next year. But I think it also has to do with technology changes and the ability to fit what is needed into the tower as we progress and new technology comes out.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Also, we received feedback in the committee process from the tower specifically that the location as it is now is not the most preferred for the airfield configuration.
Mm-hmm. On the airport administration relocation, you understand that the fence to the aeronautical movement area is right here next to this, and airside access to buildings and things of that nature, particularly in this quadrant of the airport, are going to be looked at closely for potentially repurposed, looking at what the best and highest use is, again, for those facilities on this side of the airport. Electric charging infrastructure to support electric aircraft. It's a coming trend. It's something we talk a lot about in aviation. Unmanned and manned and cargo aircraft in vertiport development. Electrification of airports is also an important component in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and some of that may have to do with the actual aeronautical infrastructure. Some may have to do with ground service equipment, airport vehicles, aircraft, other things associated with airport operations. Again, looking at the cargo apron design for changes in aircraft fleet mix type, and then the aircraft rescue and firefighting facilities and equipment to accommodate changes in future aircraft fleet. As we see the fuselage get longer and the number of passengers increase inside the aircraft, the ARF index, or the way that we measure the proper response for aircraft rescue and firefighting, may change as well. We're looking at drainage improvements that Sarah will discuss in greater detail, and then the obstruction removal based on the airspace analysis. Airports are concerned with vertical development on the airport, near the airport, and part of that design review is encompassed in the master planning process to understand what obstructions may be out there and how the airport can mitigate those. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to talk about other ongoing airport studies.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. I'm Sarah Iza. I'm the Capital Development Manager here at the airport, and we're glad to be here tonight to present some progress on the master plan update. I wanted to be sure to explain the other ongoing airport studies that are happening at the same time as the master plan update. So the point that we would like to make tonight is that all of these are coordinated and going on simultaneously. You may have heard of our terminal improvement project, which is a terminal addition. We're at the final stages of the concept design for that with a firm called Corgan. Those plans will be rolled out to the public very soon, and also our boards and commissions. Also, we have the General Aviation Redevelopment Project, which a firm named Jacobs is helping us with. That project was identified in the 2017 master plan as 2 FBO leasehold areas that were identified for redevelopment. This building is actually part of that study area. Jacobs is completing a business case analysis for the relocation of our administration and having this building be part of that redevelopment, as well as preparing a request for proposals for 2 proposals for FBO redevelopment on those leaseholds. Also, we have the Southfield redevelopment project, which our council just awarded a contract for construction on. That will be south of the terminal, and it will provide 3 remain overnight spots, as well as some car rental parking and some additional surface parking. We also have the drainage master plan update, which Mead and Hunt is helping us with, and Ms. Metzger is managing that project. That is kicking off at the same time as our sea level rise adaptation plan, which Ms. Metzger is also managing. That project is funded by the California Coastal Commission. So those are two very important projects, which we're looking forward to the data, which will inform the master plan. Also this summer, or later this year, we will be doing the airfield marking signage and lighting project. So the signs all over the airfield will be changing. And then as far as next steps go for this project, the master plan update, we will be finalizing facility requirements. We will provide an alternatives analysis. There will be more land use planning input and more public outreach. And I'd like to remind everyone that we have other meetings this week. We have 6 public meetings this week in total, so we're right in the middle of our marathon. Tomorrow we will be visiting our Santa Barbara Planning Commission. That's at 1 p.m. That will also be televised if anyone would like to participate. Also tomorrow we will be hosting a master plan open house here in this building, in this room, from 4 to 6 p.m. And that's an open house workshop. You can come and ask any questions about the projects that we have ongoing or provide input, recommendations that will be fed into the analysis. And as Mr. Hastert mentioned earlier, we had a technical input committee meeting today as well as a community input committee meeting today in this room. There will also be many opportunities to participate in the future. So you can see now we're going through the spring 2023 alternatives. There will be more input committee meetings this summer and then more public meetings this fall where the public will be able to review the alternatives and look at our proposed airport layout plan and provide comments. And if there are any questions, the email for this project is sba_mpu@santabarbaraca.gov. And the public can sign up for project updates at flysba.com/MPU. So all of the presentations this week will be posted on that webpage next week. If anyone would like to provide comments, we're taking them in. So with any questions, thank you.
Chair Houghton, if I might add just a few clarifying items, just based on the presentation that we did yesterday and some of the questions that came up. One is looking at the FBO areas. And one of the things that was a focus when I was hired was to look at general aviation and continue to move those projects forward. So as you are probably aware, our FBOs have been operating on short-term leases for a long period of time. And so we're looking to bring back long-term leases through this RFP process that will enable private investment to be made into the facility with world-class facilities that this airport deserves for their corporate traffic. But what that will also do is free up the northwest corner of the airport for other general aviation support activities for things like flight schools or maintenance or just other support, even maybe just private storage hangars. Another issue that was raised is, are we looking at a restaurant? So I don't have any answers specific to where a restaurant could go, but yes, it's definitely a lot of pressure to find a place for a restaurant and have that be considered. What will come out of that, I'm not sure yet. But and then the biggest question that is constantly asked is, if we are looking to a terminal improvement, is that attracting more airline service, and is that going to create more noise? And so what I can tell you is the forecast that we have presented tonight is a forecast that's an unconstrained forecast that will probably happen if that's the way that the economy goes and that's the way that the industry trends towards. And our terminal currently can accommodate that. It would just be an uncomfortable experience. So it'd be a bad passenger experience, both for concessions, food, other amenities, as well as if we were to get busy enough to where there's some congestion. It's not that those flights wouldn't come here, but you might have an aircraft sitting waiting for a gate to clear before they can come in and park and unload their passengers. So all of these are going to be policy decisions that come back to the commission and council to look at. But this plan and the terminal concept that we will present aren't designed to try to attract more air service. It's brought forward to try to bring back a better passenger experience. Those flights are dictated by the economy in the local area and not because we have a facility that they can operate out of.
Thank you, Director Hastert. And Ms. Isa, thank you for your presentation, and also want to acknowledge Mr. Bullock and Mr. Moore from Mead and Hunt, a very complete presentation. I'd like to ask my fellow commissioners, any questions or clarifications? Vice Chair Glazier.
Thank you, sir. We have a number of revenue-generating buildings on this property that are deteriorating pretty rapidly. Have you considered having some sort of a life cycle cost analysis to go through and determine, what priorities might be, or to try and, think about how we might address some of that to continue that revenue that we get?
So thank you, Commissioner Glazer. We had a lack of a properties team, I would say, when I first started here. So we brought on Tony Haas as our property manager. One of the other introductions I was going to make tonight, if she was here, was our new property supervisor. So we are actually staffing up to be able to address a lot of those needs. It's kind of a two-part question. We have a lot of aging infrastructure in facilities. Which facilities do we plan to keep for the future, and which facilities are we looking to redevelop? So this master plan process and a lot of the work we're looking at for the General Western Aero hangars and things like that will help us to do that. But yes, once we have a better idea for which facilities are going to remain, we are looking to do a much better job at catching up on some of that deferred maintenance and strategically planning for the future.
If I may add, with respect to the FBO redevelopment, so the areas of the 2 leaseholds that were proposed in the 2017 master plan, those areas will have a facility condition analysis prepared prior to the RFP being released, so that everyone is on equal footing in terms of the existing conditions on the sites.
Commissioners Miller and Grabman, any questions?
I had a question kind of relevant to the previous one. As I recall, after the last master plan, shortly thereafter, right towards the tail end, there was a specific development plan that was done. I believe it was mostly for the non-aviation properties. Is that also going to be kind of a follow-on to this to get into those aspects in more detail, or is that imagined to all be part of this plan?
So Sarah can probably talk about that a little bit, but the specific plan is more of a traditional government function for just land use development. And so because it's non-aviation, that's where you would go through that normal process for a specific plan. The master plan really covers the aviation side of things. So as that specific plan may or may not need to be updated, we definitely would look at that. I believe the specific plan is actually fairly good the way that it is right now, and we are looking for further development within those specific plan guidelines. Sarah, do you have anything you want to add?
No, that's correct. I would just like to add that the specific plan was amended after the master plan was adopted. And it is available on our website, on that webpage. So you will be able to find it there.
So then that's potentially driven by any changes in the master plan, and it gets revised.
Sorry, no, they're mostly separate. So the specific plan is all non-aviation north of the airport.
And is there a time schedule that the specific plan usually gets revised?
Not unless needed, no.
Okay.
Yeah, so with the master plan, you have a lot of changing conditions by the FAA. With the specific plan, unless there is something that changes in building code or zoning that we really have to make an amendment, they generally last a long time.
Great. All right. Thank you.
And I just have one comment. I found your restaurant location. The tower, if it's abandoned for the new one. Having toured it a week ago, I can tell you it'd be a very nice restaurant. There's plenty of room. And it is the most habitable space in the city at 10 stories, I think 110 feet tall. So let's not just knock it down. So, okay. Commissioners, no other questions? All right. Mo, I have 3 speakers' comments on the master plan. Do you have any more?
I do.
All right. Well, then it's my pleasure to bring up Mr. Gordon Feingold.
Hi, Commissioners. Director Hastert. I'm Gordon Feingold. I've been a general aviation pilot here out of Santa Barbara for 49 years. I'm going to turn 70 this weekend. So anyway, and I'm also the AOPA Airport Support Network volunteer for Santa Barbara. I was involved also in the original, or actually the 2017 master plan as a volunteer. So I am fortunate to be able to fly all over the country, and as Director Hastert alluded to, our facilities here at Santa Barbara for general aviation are kind of way behind where they should be, and they don't really reflect the Santa Barbara experience that we should have here. And this is certainly not the fault of the FBOs. I'm a tenant at Atlantic, and the folks are just wonderful, but they have their hands tied behind their backs because they don't have the facilities. I mean, the Atlantic ramp is about the size of a postage stamp, and it's very difficult for them to do the job that they really want to do, and that we as Santa Barbarans want them to be able to do for people that visit our city. So I'm very encouraged to hear that we're going to hopefully move forward on some improvements for the FBOs. In terms of hangars, I was involved with the 24T hangars that were built. I guess it's been about 15 years now. But other than that, there essentially been no general aviation hangars built here in 60 years, and it's really pitiful. And I was in a hangar on the south side there that was mostly populated by spiders and lizards. It's a kind of battle between the spiders and lizards. But so we really would like to see that happen. And I know that the FBOs have waiting lists for hangars, and I know that there are unofficial waiting lists to get on the waiting list for hangars. That's how much demand there really is for it. So I really would like to see that happen as well. And again, as a volunteer for the last master plan effort, it was beyond frustrating to spend all those years working on it, and all the public meetings that we had and all the public input. We came up with a 600-page EIR that was actually approved by the city council. We're ready to go, and to have that then sit on the back burner and nothing be done in terms of general aviation facilities was beyond frustrating. So I'm very excited and encouraged to see this effort starting up anew and dust the thing off and improve it. And I'd just like to offer my help and my encouragement, and I'm sure AOPA's help as well. Anything we can do to help move this forward and get some general aviation facilities that we can be proud of here at Santa Barbara. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Feingold. I can assure you that our director has much interest in general aviation, so I think you've got a good advocate. I'd like to now call up former Commissioner Carl Hopkins. It's good to see you, Carl.
Good to be back here again. In addition to being a former commissioner, I was one of those, there are 3 of us here, that was on that original master plan that started actually December 7th, 2011. We had our first meeting here in this room. And the previous master plan was all about the terminal. And so we were told this master plan was going to concentrate primarily on general aviation. The draft of that document was produced in February of 2014. The EIR in August of 2015, and apparently, and I can't remember why, it took another 2 years to get the final approval. But my concern is that these are the things that master plan called for. Taxiway hotel extension, FBO redevelopment, general aviation moved to the northwest corner, and a long-term, at that time we didn't think we needed a structure, that was maybe, but long-term parking all the way down. Unfortunately, now, from 2011 to 2023, we've accomplished 0 of those items. So while I understand the need for the master plan, particularly as the tremendous growth we've gotten in the commercial side of things, we have a good existing approved master plan right now that lists a number of items that need to be done. So let's continue with the master plan, particularly as associated with the commercial. But on the other side, I certainly hope that I won't be back here 10 years from now saying we still haven't accomplished all of these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Last but not least, Mr. Francisco Chacon. We've not seen you for a while, Mr. Chacon.
Mr. Administrator and Commission, I'm probably here to be your downer for the night, and I know you can't respond to me, so I like to start out with a few questions. Who are you working for here? Are you working for business? Are you working to bring money here? Are you working for the airport to make money? Or are you working for the people of Santa Barbara? Were you elected by the people Are we appointed by some council person that says, hey, this is a good guy, he knows a lot about airplanes and can bring business here? A lot of business, just like State Street, which has over 40 empty spaces right now. This is not a commission that's here to take care of business and make it easier. Doctor's not here anymore. Make it easier for somebody to come down here and make more money to fly in here. This is a commission that's going to take care of the community. It's going to take care of the people that are living around here. We have 2 elected officials back there, and I hope they're doing that. Commission, it looks, like I said before, a group of smiley, happy faces just saying yes to everything. We can't do that. The master plan, I noticed that we don't have a lot of community members planning on that. And we have some company from I don't know where with all these statistics, I don't know where they got them from, that's the basis of our master plan. We can't do that. Our municipal airport here is for us. It's not for somebody else to come here and make money off of. It's not for somebody to say, hey, we got to get more FBOs here to make money and to fix up their facilities. Just my background, I've been here for most of my life. I'm a retired fire captain from the city of Santa Barbara, senior fire captain. I spent 34 years with them. I've lived in the Turnpike-Patterson area for 30 years, so I've seen what goes on. And the only bright spot I saw was that Mr. Hopkins said all the stuff that they thought was going to happen is not happening. And the same thing with us. We have a big noise issue that we want to address, and I think that's something that should be in the master plan. We should say, okay, we're going to try and put all this stuff in here to make this happen and budget for it, not just talk about it, not just say, yeah, we'll work on that. Let's do it. Let's make our community better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chacon. Good seeing you again. Commissioners, any comments, clarifications based upon the public comment?
And Chair Houghton, I believe one of our liaisons would like to make a comment as well.
Oh, okay. Council members.
Thank you, and I promise I won't be too much of a downer. And a couple of these will probably be more specifically germane, and a couple others perhaps offline. You can just direct me to the proper forum. So the first one is, I think one way that would engender some goodwill in the community, particularly for some people that have been in the community for a long time and are sensitive to the noise, but are also really proud of the kind of shared history of the Goleta-Santa Barbara joint airport, would be to find a way to save the 2 hangars, the General Western Aero hangars. So that's just something to think about as you're moving forward. There's things you can do on noise. There's things you can't do on noise. Any opportunities you can find to engender goodwill in the community, find partnerships, I think would be helpful. Another suggestion, this one may be less germane because it's not direct on the airport campus per se, but a potential regional partnership between the school district, the city, and the city of Santa Barbara and the airport on finding a place for a long-term lease somewhere on the property for the school district. They have a major need for moving their buses to a different facility. You could lease that to them, find a good economic solution that would allow Old Town Goleta, which currently has a bus yard on a piece of prime real estate next to the community center, to be opened up. It could be something like a community pool. It could be a library and a cooling center and a warming center for Old Town, which doesn't have that. So I think there's opportunities for us to all work together, and I think those are a couple of thoughts. A question, this is another one that may not be terribly germane, but what are your plans for future sediment removal operations from the Goleta Slough to Goleta Beach for beach nourishment? I know you have an environmental impact report, and at least periodically there's some sediment removal that goes down to Sandspit Road and Goleta Beach, and I know that helps you with your operations and other things. I just don't really have a sense for frequency, and one of the reasons why it's important to Goleta residents is because the less frequently that happens, the more erosion you have down at the beach, and then you don't really have the nourishment occur until you have something like an emergency, and then you have to have the debris basins come down and put their sediment. If there were a way to have more frequent beach nourishment, I think that would be really positive. But I'm also sensitive to the fact that you're your own specific agency and you have your own needs. So maybe that's just something we can talk about offline. And then the last thing is I appreciated the comment from the airport director about the goal not being, with a potential terminal expansion, to not necessarily be about generating more passengers, but improving the passenger experience. One thing I'll be curious about, and perhaps this will be eventually addressed through your response to the City Council, would be where does the number of takeoffs and landings play into that? Would they be roughly proportional to the increase of passengers, or is part of improving the passenger experience having more flights to choose from so that you're having less kind of clustering on specific flights, which could impact things such as the type of aircraft that's used, the amount of noise generated by that aircraft. You know, supposedly electric planes will eventually solve all of these noise problems, and we'll all get along. It'll all be shiny and happy after that. But in the meantime, anything that you could do to kind of help illuminate for us what would really be the relationship, not so much between the passenger increases, the 4.8, but what does that mean for takeoffs and landing? Roughly proportional, not proportional, and if not proportional, which direction? More flights and more takeoffs and landings, fewer takeoffs and landings. That would be useful information for us to have. Again, this is a public comment. I don't expect you to respond to anything I just asked or said, but just thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Carrico. We appreciate it. And if we do not have any more public comments from the commissioners, thank staff very much for all your efforts leading this meeting. Ms. Graham, Mr. Haas, Ms. Isa, Director Hastert. I will adjourn this meeting at 7:07 p.m.